Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here is your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode in Season 4 of the People in Fundraising podcast series that focuses on nonprofit leaders and lets them share a bit of their expertise, their career journey in this profession. Today is Wednesday, February 5th, 2025, and I am so delighted for this conversation today. I am interviewing Brooke Burke, who succeeded me at Harvard Business School 7 years ago, almost. And I know I left a trail of chocolate milk and other things in my office that I apologize you having to navigate around. But Brooke, welcome to People in Fundraising. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
My pleasure. So tell us by your title, by your institution, a little bit about you, then we'll get into our questions, please.
Sure. So I'm the Director of Prospect Development at Dartmouth College's Geisel School of Medicine, as well as the Dartmouth Health Hospital System. So my office is referred to as MHA, Medical Healthcare Advancement. So we're a hybrid office, and that's something that really made me excited for this work because I got to do a little bit of higher ed and a little bit of healthcare. So it's, I think, a great role for me.
Awesome. And how long have you been at Dartmouth, Brooke?
I have been at Dartmouth now for about 2.5 years.
Okay, excellent.
So I feel like I know what I'm doing for the most part. I know my daily routine and I know who to go to ask all the questions.
That's awesome. Very good. Excellent. Well, Brooke, if we always do this with our guests. Thank you for your introductory statements there. Our first question, same as every guest gets. If we can rewind the clock and please tell us in a few minutes how you entered the fundraising profession and maybe specifically your career in prospect development. I'm fascinated to hear that.
Sure. So I moved to Boston, where I still reside right outside the city. Moved to Boston for college
Okay.
and stayed for grad school. And um, graduated with my master's in 18th century British literature in 2009, right during the
Oh,
financial
oh
crisis.
boy. Okay.
So my major was not really a sought after. They weren't looking for 18th century British lit prose.
I see.
Um,
Yes.
so I was in the position after I graduated to really find a job. I wanted to stay in Boston, so
Yeah.
who was hiring? And
Yeah.
I actually started my career in commercial real estate, which was not a good fit for me.
Okay.
Not not where my I think, I'm very mission driven and there's not a whole lot of mission to be had in commercial real estate unless your mission is just making tons of money. And that was never what I was looking for.
Sure.
So I worked in commercial real estate for about 2 years, and it was actually a colleague whose wife worked in development at Northeastern. And my husband and I had dinner with the two of them, and she was like, Brooke, you would love this. You'd be so good. And I was like, what is development? I don't even know this thing that you're
Yeah.
talking about. So she explained that it was, an office that fundraises for all different parts of the college and for scholarship. And that got me really excited. I thought here's somewhere I could use my research and my writing skills, my communication skills. So when a position opened, I went and interviewed and I got that position and I worked as a coordinator where I worked for 3 different fundraisers and very quickly had two of the fundraisers I worked for were kind of going above the research team and just asking me to put together some research for them.
Oh, okay.
So I very quickly kind of honed those skills, and the director of research there, Bruce Berg, who is still at
Oh,
Northeastern,
yes.
Everyone knows Bruce,
He's awesome.
because he's wonderful and amazing. But he kind of showed me some tools that I could use if I just needed to do these quick one-offs. And then as soon as a position opened on his team, which was pretty quickly after I had been there, I jumped at the opportunity. I got the role on his team, and then I worked for Bruce for I think 5 years. I
Great.
really consider him to be like my number one mentor.
Hmm.
Um, I just, he was always willing to help me, giving me great tools, great ways to learn, always putting me in front of people. Um, and that's where I really got addicted to research. I was like, this is the coolest job. I get to
Yeah.
just find rich people who will give money to Northeastern. So that's kind of how I looked at it at that point in my career.
Sure.
Um, Through the years at Northeastern, my last role there was as the associate director of prospect management,
Okay.
and that's what I fell in love with was prospect management. I
Okay.
loved getting to work really closely with the fundraisers. I loved helping them strategize. I loved looking at the data, like who's doing well, who's not doing well, what can we do to help someone succeed.
Sure.
Um, so that role was wonderful. Um, and then there came a time where I was just ready to do something different. So a
Hmm.
role had opened at Milton Academy,
Oh, yeah.
which was very foreign to me. I am very much like a public school raised girl. So at first I wasn't sure if Milton would be the right fit for me. But in interviewing there and meeting the fundraisers, I thought, wow, this is a really cool place where I can put a stamp on it. There hasn't been a research program. I get to create one
Oh,
myself.
that's
So
cool.
it was really exciting to help the fundraisers there who are fabulous fundraisers to build a pipeline, to look at what that pipeline was, to look at our portfolios, to look at the incredible prospects that were
Yeah.
out there at a school like Milton Academy. So it was a great role. I then became pregnant with my son, and while I was on maternity leave, I got a phone call from someone I worked with at Northeastern
Oh,
who was at Babson and said, "Oh my gosh, we need a director of research and prospect management. Come to Babson." And I was
oh,
like,
cool.
this seems crazy to like have a baby and come back from maternity leave to a brand new job.
Right. Yeah.
But it also seemed really exciting. So I I took the job at Babson. I ran the research shop there for a number of years. Really loved it. Really loved again their focus on scholarship, which is so important to me. Um, and after I'm like, there's so many steps here, Tim. After Babson, I ended up in the formerly Tim Wilson role at HBS. Was referred to as the new Tim for I think the first 6 months that I worked there. And you already got the chocolate milk joke in because that was one of the things I learned about you very quickly, without knowing you. But I felt like I had some high standards to live up to
Oh, you're
coming
too
from your
kind. The check,
your previous role.
the check's in the mail,
Um,
Brooke, for saying that.
and Harvard Business School was unlike any place I have ever worked.
Sure.
It is just wealth beyond any place you could compare. The most interesting prospects
Totally.
doing the craziest things,
Yeah.
really taking risks. And I mean, taking risks because they have this great opportunity as, alumni and students of HBS. And I really enjoyed my time there. I enjoyed the people I worked with so much. But I started getting to a place where I just felt like, what's the mission that I'm working toward here?
Mm. Yeah.
There didn't seem the need, as I think so many people think of so many Ivy League schools. So one of my former colleagues from HBS contacted me and said, "Hey, this role just opened up at Dartmouth. You should take a look at it."
Yeah.
So I looked at the role and I thought, "Oh, this is so cool. It's the medical school and a healthcare system."
Yeah.
Healthcare is something that always interested me because, my whole background had been in education.
Yeah.
And I saw that it was hybrid because obviously I live outside of Boston. It's at Dartmouth, it's a long drive.
Yes.
So I emailed the hiring manager and said, "I'm very interested in this job. I see that it's hybrid. What does hybrid mean to you?"
Yeah, right.
And she quickly responded and said, "Please apply. Like, we can make something work if
Wow.
all goes well."
Okay.
So the more I learned about it through the interview process, meeting my team who are incredible, I was like, this is the perfect place for me because the mission is so clear. Um, I knew that I would go to bed every night knowing that the work I was doing was towards a greater good and
Yeah.
taking care of people. And um, it just was kind of this bright light, and I knew I had to do it. So they
Yeah.
hired me, which was step one.
Yes.
Um, and I now work in a hybrid, we'll call it hybrid. What does
Okay.
hybrid mean? Um, so I go up about once a month. I'll go up. I stay overnight sometimes to be in 2 days. My
Oh,
whole team is quite local. So, but we've actually shifted offices. So we're in more of a hoteling space now.
okay.
So, everyone's kind of in this remote land at some point during the week, and Zoom is how we all communicate
Yeah.
constantly. So I feel like that's my background. That's how I got where I am now. So I'm
Awesome.
back connected to a true mission that I feel really wonderful about. Not to say that there were not great missions before, but this one, hits really close to home. So
Yes. Well, yeah, and like I like how you began talking about your career, Brooke, um, with that thought of what is the mission. Like when you're in commercial real estate, there's a mission gap there. And so as I was listening to you, it's like, okay, you're getting closer and closer to what seems to be a very important tie-in to the work you do with the institution. And so to now be at a place where you feel like you have reached that point where skills experience connects strongly to mission has got to be very rewarding.
it is. It's incredibly rewarding. And I
Yeah.
feel like in healthcare especially, things change so
Yeah.
rapidly, um, that there's just always something new and exciting to learn about from a physician, from a Geisel faculty member. There's always really exciting things happening that in some small way I feel like I've been a part of.
Awesome. That's great. For those who don't know, what can you tell us about who Geisel is named for, please?
Well, this is always an interesting one. So Geisel is named for Dr. Seuss.
Yeah.
So it's the Geisel School of Medicine. During his lifetime, he and his family gave money to the medical school. And eventually Theodore Geisel became the namesake of the medical school, which is especially fun with a children's hospital,
Yeah.
having being connected to the Geisel school. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So Brooke, as you were talking about your career history and naming places, Northeastern, Milton Academy, Babson, HBS, and now Dartmouth, um, I wonder, and I think you've touched on it, like just, a lot of this was, people thinking highly of you, saying you'd be a great fit here. For yourself, as your career progressed, did you was there an emphasis in your own mind about I need to, broaden my own portfolio of experience, or was it more like I'm happy where I'm at Milton or Babson or HBS, and then this opportunity comes up that's like, this is a great opportunity, and it gets me a more diverse, a broader perspective of how development works, how prospect development in specific works at these various sectors.
Sure. So I think I would say in the majority of these cases, I wasn't looking for another job. I was happy doing the work that I was doing. I was happy with the teams that I worked with. Um, they all kind of came up as these just opportunities just to check something out and see like, that like vibe check. Like, what do I
Yeah,
think of this person who I would report to? And really, I wanted to do bigger and bigger things. I didn't just want to be a researcher anymore. I didn't just want to be in charge of just the prospect management piece of a shop. I wanted the opportunity to run the whole thing,
yeah,
and I wanted to manage a team. So it's like those little things with each step I took, it was like, okay, now you're running the whole research shop. Now
yeah,
you're managing a team. And some of these places we were building it all. It didn't
yeah,
exist before. So that was really exciting. Um, HBS was such a different story because they really had the manpower and the program was built out. And so I kind of took that as a challenge where I was like, if I can make it at HBS, like this is the penultimate place to work.
sure.
I was like, if I can make a difference here, then I'm going to be able to do anything I want to do in the future. And
Yeah.
when this role came up at Dartmouth, I it just felt really right. Like it
Mm,
was kismet, the timing, the
yeah,
this opportunity to do something that was really mission driven.
yeah,
It was just a really good fit. So it's kind of a mix of both. It's been
yeah,
the opportunities have really presented themselves, and I've wanted to take on more and more and more and
sure.
learn more and struggle more and, like figure out all the answers to these questions of how can I create the best shop where we're finding the best prospects and getting the most money to solve problems. And so a little bit of both.
Yeah, yeah.
Long answer.
That's no, that's very telling. Thank you. I think, a lot of people can relate to that where um, they may see like certainly in prospect development, like the way to move up is to, as you just talked about, is you manage the research team or the data analytics team, then you manage the department, and then um, do you become the head of advancement services and oversee all of that?
I don't want to do that.
Yeah, right.
I'm happy where I'm at.
Yes. But I loved how you phrased it in a way that it's like, it's a step-by-step, incremental, methodical approach to advance someone's career while making an impact. And I liked how you also said, like, just now, the importance of struggling, like being challenged, challenging yourself. I think that's really important.
And I think challenge would have been a better word than struggle. Although I feel like there's a slash in between those two words.
Yeah.
And, it's fun to put the pieces together and figure out the way to make things work really well.
Yes.
And there's a
Yeah.
million different ways to do it. So,
Yeah.
and every shop has the teams are set up differently. The prospects are incredibly different. I mean, if
Totally.
you look through my career, such different types of prospects. So,
Yeah.
and now especially. So it's been a little bit of both opportunities and also just growth.
Yeah. Yeah. That's well put. And this is not me being interviewed, but one thing I will say is Marianne Ayako, who you overlapped with at HBS, when I left, she was running the prospect research management team. I think they had rephrased it a couple of times, so
Yes.
it may have been different. Prospect research was really her specialty at that point in her career. And she's like, at one point she's like, Tim, you're really comfortable. You've been here for 17 years, and what do you want to, like, I had a young family. That's part of why I stayed at HBS for so long. My wife and I have 4 kids, and so just the dependability of my schedule and not learn as you just talked about, so great. Learning new teams and how they function and learning a new prospect base and a database and all that. But she's like, what do you want to do? Like, what comes next for you? Because you aren't challenging yourself. And so I think that's why I hit on when you talked about that too, like just the importance of, um, pushing yourself. Yes, that can fall under continuous lifelong learning, but also like, using your skills and taking that leap. And I think, your career has demonstrated that in a great, healthy way of like learning fundraising and then learning prospect research and then managing the team. And now you've had such a rich diversity of management experience and institutional experience. So I think that's just a compliment to embracing challenge.
Yeah, and Marianne hired me. I adore Marianne. I
She's
think
awesome.
she's so wonderful. And, she hired me for the role you left, which was prospect management. And she's like, how do we keep this going? How
Yeah,
do you work with such a strong fundraising team in a place like HBS. So you
yeah,
have to be just as strong to say, I think we could do this differently, or this
sure.
is working really well. How can we apply it to something else?
Yes.
Um, so I really just think Marianne is so wonderful and was such a support and had so many great ideas and really knew how to look at the staff she had and say, this is what you should be doing. This is
Yeah.
what you should be doing. So,
Yeah.
um, love Marianne.
Yes. Yeah, she's awesome. I want to get to this question, Brooke, here. Again, going back to that, the richness of experience. Given that you've gone from prospect research to the prospect management side, managing a team, and especially going from the educational space to the healthcare space in fundraising, do you have any suggestions or tips for other people in prospect development that feel like their career would also benefit from the challenge of going from higher education or education in general to healthcare and you know HIPAA and all sorts of other considerations
Oh,
that go with it.
HIPAA. Well, read up on HIPAA because
Yeah.
that's a really fun change. But when I thought about this question, there were kind of two things that really popped out to me. And one is be ready to learn, and the other is be ready to cry, which I will explain.
Okay.
Um, so the biggest difference for me between working in education and working in healthcare is that when you're working in healthcare, things are rapidly changing. What the
Yeah.
physicians, what the researchers are working on. You have to be ready to understand what all of these moving parts are. You have to be ready to read every article that comes through your email because there's so much happening and so many incredible things happening, which kind of leads to the be ready to cry part, which is we hear so many compelling, beautiful stories of ways that Dartmouth Health has saved lives, is working on cures. Especially for me, I have a young son and anything related to the children's hospital, and I'm in
Sure.
tears. Like,
Sure. Yeah.
we get to hear these really beautiful stories. And that's where for me the mission just feels so important. You see a short video about an infant who was flown by Dart, which is our um, medevac helicopter.
Oh, yeah.
And they dart the child off to the hospital they need to be at, and the child's life is saved. And you see them 3 years later meeting the pilot of that
Oh,
helicopter.
wow.
And it's like if like I've just given myself goosebumps, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
those kind of stories where I'm like, I need to find a prospect who wants to give money to DART. Like, who's going to
Yes.
fund this helicopter? Who's
Right.
going to fund this research that, this doctor is doing, or this faculty at the medical school, faculty member at the medical school who's, teaching these incredible residents and these incredible medical school students. Um, there's just so much to feel passionate about and so much to go, I'm really doing good.
Yes.
We don't always get to see the connection from A to B to C to D, but sometimes we do, and it's really cool. It's an amazing feeling.
Yes. Absolutely.
So those are my tips, but your HIPAA comment, there is a lot to learn about HIPAA and PHI and, just making sure that all of that medical data is secure and only used in the ways that it should be used. So
Right. Yeah.
that was a big learning curve for me, where luckily I did not make any mistakes, but I,
Nice.
I needed to do a lot of reading up on it.
I'm so glad you talked about the human element in that answer because that's important. Of course, you know, learning processes and learning about policies and how teams function and what constraints and guardrails they have as an institution is important. But I love that you also included just the emotional human impact of working in healthcare.
Yeah, and I don't think I ever thought I'd end up in healthcare because I am so passionate about education.
Yeah.
And when I started at Northeastern, Northeastern is not what it is today.
Hmm.
Northeastern was not topping Newsweek,
Yeah.
Newsweek's lists of top colleges, and it was really just known for its co-op program. So when I started
Yes.
there, the fundraising was all about scholarship, and
Hmm.
that's something that is really important to me. So I never saw myself going into healthcare, but I've now found like this perfect niche where I'm in healthcare, but I'm also in
That's true.
academia. So it's
Yeah.
it's the best of both worlds.
That's awesome. I'm happy for you. Brooke, with our last few minutes, I'd like to get to this last question today and appreciate all the insights you've shared so far. Um, which, and this gets a little away from, the role, the sector. It's more of the personal, people in fundraising side of the conversation. Um, so I want to hear your thoughts on, when you got this question, what early life or early career experience and your reaction to that experience most vividly let you know who you are. So, for example, relocating for college or changing majors, changing professions as you've done. Anything come to mind about that question, please?
Yeah, so it's funny because many of those questions blend together to me for kind of my answer to this, and it goes back to the scholarship piece and
Hmm.
why education is so important to me. And I would say I moved to Boston. I was first generation college graduate, college student. I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and I said to my mom, I want to move to Boston. That's where I want to go for school. And
Wow.
she said, follow your dreams. If that's where you want to go, like let's see what we can do and how we can get you there. So, needless to say, I went to a private college that I should have probably gone to a public college in
Oh,
Pennsylvania
uh-huh.
when it came to the price, but my mom just kept saying, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So I essentially paid for college and grad school by myself.
Okay.
I worked two jobs on top of a work study job. I
Wow.
barely slept all through college, but I was
Sure.
like, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
But it was really hard. It was,
Yeah.
I wasn't able to do a lot of what my friends were doing. I wasn't able to fly off to fun places for the weekend or take trips to New York City. I
Sure.
was, working at a restaurant or working in the residence life office,
Yeah.
which all gave me great work experience. Everyone should work at a restaurant at some point in their life.
I've heard that before. Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
my son will be, bussing tables as soon as he turns 14. But I just scholarship is so important to me. I would not have been able to go to undergrad or graduate school without the scholarships that I was provided. So I want to always be giving back to that. I want to always know that my work is helping provide someone who may not be able to
Yeah.
afford their education, especially first generation college students.
Sure.
I think, I took a big leap of faith moving to Boston,
Yeah.
but in the end, it is my own personal experience that has made me so passionate about giving back to others. It's not every day you feel like you're giving back to others. Sometimes I need to remind myself at work, like, you're doing this for the good. Like,
Right.
it's not
Right.
when you're in an Excel spreadsheet with 100 prospects' names, like, it doesn't feel like I'm putting money in a medical student's hand. So
Right.
it's it's times like this when I'm able to reflect and say, like, I am doing positive things and I am helping people and I'm helping people who struggle just like I struggled. And
Sure. Yeah.
um, so I feel like that ties into five of your questions.
Oh, yeah. I love how you brought it all together. That was beautifully put, Brooke.
Yes, I don't have any, knock on wood, no big healthcare needs, but it is
Yeah.
that part, I think, if you can't feel mission driven by working for a healthcare system, then I mean,
Yes.
it's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me, during the early days of the pandemic, I was working from home, which I had wanted to do for years anyway, and just brought about by the pandemic. Um, and I was working at Intermountain Healthcare, and I was in this room where I'm doing these interviews. And I would take a break, go upstairs, have lunch with my family, and my wife and our daughters would be sewing cloth face masks, and my sons would be like running the supply chain of like, okay, here's the string or the elastic. You gotta put this with the material, then you gotta bag it up. And it was an initiative between Intermountain Healthcare and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which most people know as the Mormon Church, and a couple of other community partners. And I thought, man, like that's that mission. That's the impact right there. Like I leave, as you said, a spreadsheet. I'm working in a spreadsheet on prospects. I leave that for a moment to go upstairs and get a real life example of how people are coming together in a health emergency for our communities. And it was, again, this great partnership between private sector, religious, community associations, and bringing it all the way down to the grassroots where families were doing these things. And then I would deliver the masks to an Intermountain facility, and I had to wear this massive face shield.
Yeah,
And so you're exactly right. As you talked about mission several times today, how important that is for you, definitely you're right. In the healthcare space, you get that front and center on a continuous basis, and it's really rewarding.
it is. It is.
Yeah,
And it's rewarding when patients reach out and they say, how can I give back because of the
yeah,
experiences that they've had? That's the same way in education, right? Is you see people who say, I came here fully on scholarships. How can I help
yeah,
a student who can't afford to come here? So,
yeah,
it's all about giving back. And that's been, at my core, I think just such an important thing to me. And I never like I said to you, I think earlier, I didn't know development existed. I didn't know what advancement was.
Yeah.
So to find a place that so perfectly aligns with what I care about, what I like doing, what I'm good at, it's really exciting. We need
Yes,
to make sure more college students know that this is a career path because it's
yeah,
an awesome one to be on.
absolutely. I love just then how you said like this perfect alignment, of skills and interests and the values of the institutions.
Yeah, and I always joke with my husband that I said everyone I work with either studied like philosophy or art history or
Yeah,
geography. It's
yeah.
it's like I want to shout out to English majors and say like there is a path where
Yes,
you're not like making $20,000 in a publishing house that's probably going to close soon.
right.
There is a way that you can use this and use what you're learning. So
Absolutely. Yeah,
it's
you've demonstrated that really well.
I've told you all about my 18th century British literature. I'll save that for later for you.
Well, Brooke, thank you so much. It was just a delight to connect with you. We've been connected on LinkedIn for a number of years, but to meet face to face, so to speak, and to get your perspective, which is really fascinating and rich, about the diversity of experience and being laser focused on mission and to have that alignment at this point in your career. I know our audience will appreciate hearing your perspective and your career journey.
Thanks so much, Tim. This was kind of a great exercise just to remind me of why I love to do what I do and how I've gotten here. You don't often take the time to look back on that. I feel lucky to have been the new Tim. And I have to say, have, I've just had such positive experiences everywhere I've worked, and each one of them has made me better and more qualified to do the next thing. But I plan to be where I am now for as long as they'll keep me.
Awesome. It's nice to get to that point in your career too,
I know. Well, you said director of advancement services, and I was like, nope, don't want to do
Oh,
that.
yep, not for
I like
everyone.
prospect research and management are my things.
Yes, yeah. Well, I wish you all the best, Brooke, and look forward to keeping in touch. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
And for our audience, thank you for your support over the last 3 years of People in Fundraising. Whether you tune in, watch, repost, like, share these conversations when they air, you can find Brooke's conversation on LinkedIn with a link to the YouTube audio video component, as well as the audio only on Spotify and Podbean. And thanks to Luis Diaz of the Donor Participation Project, who is sponsoring my new website, peopleinfundraising.wordifysites.com. You can find Brooke's conversation on all of those channels in mid-April of 2025. And thanks again. And Brooke, thank you again for your time today.
Thanks so much, Tim.